what the papers show is that even if they've found neutralizing antibodies, and this is in when they've done clinical trials, the biological activity might still be present.
Just giving your own experience. I thought it'd be important just to drop that in just before this podcast. If anyone thinks that we're trying to showcase any particular brand, we're not.
No, we don't want to get sued. So the disclaimer is very important. We'll start with that.
Absolutely.
But it's a controversial topic, isn't it? Tox resistance. I mean, it's spoken about a lot. There's a lot of anecdotal evidence, a lot of dogma, a lot of Chinese whispers. So hopefully we can get to the bottom of it to some degree today.
Yeah, I was actually on a Facebook forum today, which is popular in Australia, Cosmetic Nurse Forum, I think it's called. And someone even said, what do I do in this circumstance? Yep. So I just said, listen out for our podcast next week. But maybe we'll start with Steph. I mean, what do we even mean by the word resistance? I mean, is that an accepted term or does it mean something else?
Good question. Good question. Well, firstly, it is good to be here, not affiliated with companies. And Neve and I have worked together for the record, for Mertz. She lured me into the dark side years ago. So I have played around with the Mertz products. I've played around with Dysport. I've played around with Botox. I've dabbled with everything. I think that's important to know. And last week I was hit by COVID, and Neve, I just took out all these papers. So I started reading on all this stuff because I had nothing better to do because I couldn't leave my house because I was in four walls. And it was quite interesting because when I looked at the word resistance, I think is what you're talking about, immunoresistance, to the fact that all the toxins are purified proteins, and therefore a protein could elicit an immune response. Mm-hmm. So what I'm going to do is, because I'm surrounded by a whole heap of papers and my brain isn't as good as what Neve's is, so I've got them all here and I've got them all colored in so that we've got something, because I'm not that smart. I rely on people that actually give me the extra information so that I'm actually not spinning anything and stating scientific facts. So what I've done is I've gone back to some of the to the papers, and one of the papers that I found was really useful is the one from Pirazzini, and of course it's got to be good because he's Italian. He's a scientist. He doesn't inject at all, but he's done a lot of work on neurotoxins. And I'm actually going to read, and I'll put my glasses on because I won't be able to see otherwise, straight from his paper, the actual definition of immunoresistance. And I think he summarized it very beautifully in his paragraph where he talks about botulinum neurotoxins and associated proteins present in commercial preparations may elicit antibody formation when injected into patients. Antibodies formed against the accessory proteins do not interfere with the biologic activity of the toxin, and they are therefore non-neutralizing antibodies. Whereas antibodies that are formed against a neurotoxin, primarily against the heavy chain, may prevent or not the biologic activity. So we can develop antibodies against the neurotoxin. And if we look at the therapeutic literature, and I'm glad that Neve's here because I've read through so much of the therapeutic literature, and quite frankly, I find it quite confusing because when we're looking at the therapeutic literature, they talk about resistance or immunoresistance. The incidence seems to be the same across all three brands that we have available in Australia, which is quite low. And what is interesting is when you're looking at the therapeutic indications, and I know we're going to get back to this later on when we're starting to talk about high doses and frequency of intervals in terms of the interval between treatment. I think what the papers show is that even if they've found neutralizing antibodies, and this is in when they've done clinical trials, the biological activity might still be present, which kind of brings up, well, what is the importance of neutralizing antibodies? And I guess this is what we're talking about today, which then brings it across to what is the difference. So I went to another paper, and I know that Neve's going to talk about this as well, by Bellows and Jankovic, where they're looking at what a primary non-responder is versus a secondary non-responder. Yes.
I want to try and keep the answers a little bit shorter. So I'll stop you where you just stopped.
Sure.
If that's okay, because we're
Yeah,
getting
yeah.
into the material that I want to explain to the listeners who know nothing about antibodies and blah, blah, blah. Is that okay?
Yeah, sorry.
No, no, no.
No. We're
Hand
trying
it over
to
to Neve.
we're trying to make sure that people like me, lowest common denominator, who aren't medically trained, can still understand what it is that you're talking about.
Thanks so much for watching the video. If you want to listen to the whole podcast, go to your favorite podcast app and search for Inside Aesthetics.
If you like the videos we're putting out, please consider subscribing to our channel. Give us a like, smash the bell icon so that you get notified when we put out more content.
If you'd like to support us, our Patreon link is down below, and you can also follow us on Instagram on our personal accounts.